We remained in Kiev because I was absolutely sure that I'll go nowhere from my home. I'm very attached to home, and from my research of experience of displacement, I already knew how hard it is for people to lock your apartment, to lock your house, pack your life in a small suitcase, and just lock the door with the feeling that you may never come back.
Calamity and Mercy. I really appreciated this film. I think that being in a country that's going through a war, no matter what the circumstances are, is something that is one of those things that you don't know what it's like until you know what it's like. And this film does such a great job of really taking you through the experience from the point of view from people that went through it, but not just the initial kind of, you know, like the initial start of the fighting or the initial evacuations, which I think is what gets a lot of attention in the news and gets a lot of attention in general when, the beginning of a conflict, the beginning of something that's finally sparked off, and the kind of chaos that surrounds it. But this film did such a great job of taking you beyond that into what it is really like when you have to evacuate and leave your home, to figure out where you go. You have bare belongings with you, if you have anything with you, not knowing if the train is going to even get to the next point safely, not knowing if you're going to be able to clear checkpoints, things like that you wouldn't necessarily think of, because I think that, like I said, unless you've gone through it, unless you've been in it, you just don't know all of the little things that are a part of it. And even beyond that, like, then you find you're a refugee and you find a place in a new country, but what does that look like? And what does that look like for the country that's offering the kind of safe haven? Because it does have an effect on them as well. And getting papers, having things be translated if there's a language barrier, just finding like the basic needs of help, the basic resources, learning to navigate what their healthcare system is like, even if you need medical attention. And the fact that it's not usually just like it's short when you think of it in the lifespan of a person's life, but it's not like a couple of weeks. A lot of the time it's months or longer, especially if the war is continuing, if the conflict is continuing, if it's unresolved. So then it's trying to figure out, beyond the initial adrenaline and the survival skills and the survival instincts that just kind of kick in, beyond that, then you have to start thinking of like, okay, so what is next? Do we stay in this country? If we stay in this country, where do we stay? How can I get a job? Do I know the language? Is that a problem? Do I even have all of my paperwork in my papers with me? Like, there's so much more that encompasses everything than just the conflict, which I think a lot of the time is what gets focused on in the media, the initial conflict or the conflict itself, but not the fallout, not the waves that get made beyond all of that, with all of these kind of different countries that are accepting refugees, the situations that are different from, place to place, whether, you've traveled far and you've made it to a city, whether in a refugee camp, which is a different experience. Like, there's so many different aspects of it, and I really appreciate that this film took the time to take you through all of them, and to take you through all of them with not only great information being given from like the resources, the programs and things like that, but also sharing the information from people that were experiencing it firsthand, that were actually being a part of it. And this film did such a great job of, like I said, really showing you the entire process, that the beginning conflict, the fighting, the war, like, that's only just the very beginning of it. And this did such a great job kind of walking you through everything else. And even going so far as like looking at rebuilding, how is the act of the war, the act of the conflict, gonna change the makeup of the country, and not just the initial like you're rebuilding, this obviously has affected your entire country, but the heights of apartment buildings, the where people plan to settle in the country, like all of those things are going to be, affected by this. And so it really will change the makeup of the country. And looking at what those things might be and, looking towards the future. So I really, really appreciated this film. I thought it was really, really, really well done. And I thought it showed you and gave you a perspective that I don't think gets covered as much, because a lot of the time we focus on the fighting in the media, in society. We focus on the fighting, we focus on helping or stopping the fighting itself. We don't necessarily focus on all of the displacement, but not just the fact that it's happened, which I think is like a statistic that gets recited, but we don't focus on what that actually looks like. And not just for the people that are being displaced, but also for the countries that are accepting them and what that entire process looks like. So I really, really appreciated this.
Calamity and Mercy. The use of past footage in this was great. And I loved how the filmmakers kind of set up the premise for what this is with all of the text at the beginning and how they incorporated that into the film. I thought was really well done. I also liked the interviews. I mean, as heartbreaking as they were, the way that the interviews were placed within the film was really strategic and very, very creative and well done. It was heartbreaking what these survivors went through. Absolutely heartbreaking. But there was hope too with what the volunteers were doing and what was happening there. I also liked how the filmmakers kind of split this into different sections. I thought that that was very smart, and it helped you know, okay, now we're talking about this and now we're talking about this. And the music was a really nice addition. So I thought you guys did a good job.
I really liked Calamity and Mercy. Um, I thought it was a unique perspective. You know, I always say the strength of a documentary rides and dies on the subject matter, and like the subject matter was engrossing, intriguing, because it was unique in that like we hear very, as an American, I hear very like a clinical, sanitized version of stories from Ukraine from the news or whatever, but like this was like real boots on the ground and all of the mess that comes with that. Um, so I like, appreciated that perspective, and then also within that approach, a whole bunch of different perspectives within the boots on the ground, real life approach uh, of like actual uh, Ukrainian refugees, people who took refugees in from, especially that one lady that's like Russian, but she took refugees in. All of the like humanitarian aid people, all the different perspectives within the boots on the ground approach. I really created a 3D picture of and told a full story, and I really like that. Uh, the B-roll was also really well done. The interview shots were uh, pristine. Uh, Overall, really well done. Great job. 10 out of 10.
Calamity and Mercy. This doc did a truly brilliant job of exploring both the calamity, the disaster, the devastation, and the mercy, that kindness and the motivation of community to support those struggling. The power of storytelling is, I think, one of the most important connectors of the human experience, and something that is the most impactful at opening somebody's eyes up to another's experience and hopefully creating a call to action to help. And I thought they did a really wonderful job of picking subjects to share openly and honestly, from the families who woke up in the middle of the night to hear their town being bombed, to seeing everything that once was their life in devastation, destroyed, to the hope from the volunteers wanting to make a difference, who are trying to stay strong to help refugees and make a better life for those who have been driven from their own lives. There's a great sense of heart, a hope, yes, amongst the rubble and the violence. And I thought it was really important to have the nuance and the honesty from a really great array of subjects, to give the viewer an immersion into the impact of the war, which is hard sometimes just from the headlines or from across the sea. So I thought this was a really important piece.
Calamity and Mercy. In this doc, you have this emotional retelling of these experiences of those affected by the war in Ukraine. And you have people recounting the bombings, the evacuations, feeling their experience as refugees. And then you're seeing also paired with this emotional retelling is aftermath photos and visuals during the time, and just visuals that I haven't that I have not seen prior to this, and it really aids in making this a very poignant and emotionally charged documentary. I mean, images of the slain, all these things are very hard to watch, but really aids to put you in the fear and understand the colossal damage that this war has caused and is causing right now. So there's a lot of near-death experiences and a lot of footage that you just don't get to see in other outlets. I mean, when you think of living in a constant state of fear and the way these people live, it's astounding. You think about the children and how all of this will affect their development. And I like how each story is unique, but the desire to survive, the pride for Ukraine is something that's prevalent throughout. We do see victims in the stories of those also who are trying to assist the refugees. So I think that it's a mixture between that element is the calamity, and then seeing how we're seeing the point of view of those who are offering medical care to refugees or some sort of help in some other way. That's where the mercy comes in. And I do like how we got to see both sides in this piece for a well-rounded view of this horrific war.
Calamity and Mercy. This was a really well done feature documentary regarding the war in the Ukraine with the Russians. The statistics that were put up in the beginning were pretty staggering. I love the old footage too that was being shown and all the interviews with all these courageous, strong people. These horrific stories really bring it to more personal to some of us who weren't even close to kind of knowing what they've been through or what they had to go through. Just horrific. These people were super courageous, and the the volunteers and the people that took them in Italy and wherever they went, but this focused mostly on Italy, I think, in Germany. I just thought it was wonderful to see these people talk, because they talked about, especially the one woman. Oh my gosh, she was so smart. The woman sitting with, I think it was her husband and some kids behind her, and another woman, where she said, you know, they had to learn to live in a new reality and find meaning in all of this and not focus on yourself, focus on the people that need help. And it was so well said. Like she had a lot of great things to say. And another woman said, we all have the capacity to help. But that Russian woman just really resonated with me on how she talked about, you know, giving a disclaimer on being Russian, and how people didn't really care if you were helping them. They just needed help, and that was just amazing. And I love the woman who got the plants tattoo. Thought that was really neat that she had those with her. And all the volunteers, just kudos to all of you. But yeah, I just loved this documentary. I just think that it personalized everything a little more for the people who aren't around it, don't see, you know, what's happening and how scary this is for these people, and the people that didn't make it. Just scary and crazy. And these kids are so resilient, and they have people who care and are trying to make their lives normal to some degree. So I just thought it was brilliant. I thought all the technical stuff was there, and the interviews, and the way the stories were laid out, and just the way the whole thing was laid out was really good. So you guys are going to do great. I'm sure it will be seen on some of the main, you know, streamers. I hope so. Good luck.